Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Jamie Photography. Today I'm going to take a grey sky in Rotterdam and turn it into a black and white drama, as you can see here. The original image was here, and as you say, grey sky, as I said, grey sky, and not a lot going on. So we wanted to add a bit of drama. So we're going to do a sky replacement, but also I'm going to take you through a pano of the multiple images that we used to effectively make this shot up. So we have this image, this image, and this image. We're going to bring them together in a pano with a sky replacement. So yeah, let's get started. So here we go. So I've got these three shots. Going to develop module and show you each of the shots taken in the port in Rotterdam, and grey day, not a lot going on. So you know what we're going to try to do is turn this into some black and white drama. So I've taken three shots. I'm going to join them in a panorama, which I'll show you in a second. But what I'd like to point out is that the images should always be slightly underexposed. So effectively the subject is a little bit darker, maybe half to one stop darker than you would normally go with a grey sky, because what we're going to want to do is obviously do a sky replacement, and in doing that sky replacement we want lots of contrast between the subject and the sky so that we get a nice defined edge, including the tree branches when we put a sky in. So we've got 1/5 of a second taken on a tripod, f8 ISO 100, so you can tell it's a very dull, dreary day. So what we're going to do is we're going to highlight all three images. So image 1 is taken of the hotel here on the left, image 2 is slightly to the right, and image 3 is looking down the waterway. And we're taking 24mm because at the time I only had my 24 to 105 lens on the camera, so that was as wide as I could go. So we're going to take the first, click on the first image, hold down the shift key and click on the third. That will highlight all three, and then I'm going to right click on one of the images, and I'm going to go to photo merge, okay, and then we're going to go to panorama. So I'll click on that, and it will create the panorama. There we go. So we've got three different options here. Perspective is the one you would normally go for, but because it's so wide and so narrow, sometimes the perspective doesn't work. I'll try it. Let's click on there. Unable to merge pictures. No, that does not work. So we have the choice of spherical or cylindrical. So I think cylindrical is a bit too stretched, so I'm going with spherical. We can correct the perspective in a moment. What we can also do is we can try to fill the edges if we want to try to fill the image out a bit more. It's going to be difficult up here with the tree. Probably would work in the sky. We could do that by clicking fill edges, which I'll do just to show you what it does. There you go. So it's done a pretty good job on the left. The tree is, as we say, is a little bit messed up here, and on the right. So I'm going to untick that. The other thing we can do is boundary warp. Well, what that's going to do is stretch the edges of the image up against the sides. So let's try that as we work our way across. We'll go to 50% to start with, and because sometimes if you go too far you get a real change in perspective, which can be very difficult to correct, because this boat mast, for example, here on the right, if I go all the way to the left it's straight, if I move it all the way to the right it's curved, and that's actually quite difficult to correct. So I don't want to go that far. I'm going to come back and I'm going to go around about 20%, so we get a little bit more fill, a little bit more to play with. You can click auto crop, but we'll do the cropping ourselves later, and also you can click auto settings. I'll click that to show you, and it will you know, try to improve the image based on auto settings, but again we can click that later on ourselves. So I'm happy with spherical. I'm happy with the boundary warp. I'm going to click merge, and it's going to, as you can see at the top left there, it's just working through the panorama. And once complete, it will drop the image in there. Now the reason the other three have gone is that I had stacked images. If you click stack when you're doing any panorama or HDR, the working images that you started with will just be placed behind this image, so you can't use them separately anymore because you've only got this single image that you've got here. It's a good way of tidying up your film strip at the bottom, tidying up the number of images you've got. If you want to keep them separate still, then you can not tick the stacked box. And if you want to, you can always right click on the image, as you see down here, and then I can go to stacking and I can unstack, and I'll do that, and then it will place the other three images back again. You can see there. So right click stacking. So that's effectively undone now, because I did that, but that's okay. We've got the three images there. So I'm going to click on the main image here, and we're going to do some very basic processing now to get it ready for the sky replacement, which we're going to do in Photoshop. So what I want to do is I'm just going to have a look, see where we are with the highlights. So if we bring the highlights down, you can just about make out the cloud there, but I'm just going to keep that where it is. I'm going to open the shadows just a little bit. We can do more later. I just don't want to lose too much data going into Photoshop, turning it into a TIFF and bringing it back. And I'm going to leave the black and the whites as they are, and I'm just going to increase the contrast just a little bit, so we have that black subject, white sky contrast levels. So let's have a look at the crop just before we go through. So if we do crop this in here, can we come in there? Where can we place that crop? Maybe there. Be careful by the top of the building there. Yeah, it's going to be difficult over here. So I might move the crop to level there and bring that down to the top of that building there. And then we've got a little bit less to worry about over here on the right hand side. I can bring that over to the edge of the boat. So we've just got a little tiny bit there to deal with. And I'm going to accept that. So we can fill these gaps whilst we're in Photoshop. So now I think the image is pretty well ready. I'm just going to do one last thing, just check the perspective, see how it looks with auto. Go to transform and click auto, and it will straighten things up a little bit, and it doesn't look so good. So I'm going to try guided, and in guided you can draw a line to say I want this straight. So I'm going to the top of that mast, holding the left mouse down, going to the center bottom of that mast, and then I'm going to come over here on this drain pipe, and I'm just going to click on that as well. So yeah, I'm happy with that. You can do up to 4 lines, and you can also do horizontal lines to get the horizontal. If I, for example, if I pulled a line across here and said I want that to be the horizontal, it would correct the image to give me the horizontal as well as the 2 verticals, so you can pull things together. I find guided is a very powerful tool. So right, I'm going to delete that one. I don't need that one at the moment, and then I'm going to send this into Photoshop. So we're going to right click on the image itself. We're going to go to edit in Adobe Photoshop 2022, click on that. It's going to open Photoshop and place the image in there for us to work with. Let's bring the tools down. View. Just going to fit on screen. There we go. Bring these tools across. Turn properties off. We've got layers switched on, so let's bring the layers across. Don't know why it's gone off the edge of the screen there. There we go. So we'll bring the layers over here. There we go. Right. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to just check there's any areas that need to be filled. I think we had a little bit up here, but I think it's going to be okay. So I don't think we need to fill anything. So we're just going to go straight into sky replacement. To do that, you go to Edit, and for some reason it's not selected. Select the image, that would help. Edit, sky replacement. Now in sky replacement module, it's going to throw the first sky into there, which we've already had selected in there, which actually is quite a nice sky placed in there. You've got a little down arrow next to the image of the sky, and in there's some options that Adobe give you as part of the paint shop, skies. There's quite a few, and then I've got some of my own skies in here as well. Some I've taken and some I've purchased. But to go to a list of those skies, I've got them in separate folders. There's a little plus button down here. You can see this here, little plus button. If I click on that, it will take me through to where I keep my skies. So I have a number of sky packs, some from Sergio Romanelli. I also have some from Clever Photographer site. They offer a large selection of skies for a relatively small amount of money, just a few pounds, few US dollars, and you can get yourselves tens of different skies. And they've conveniently grouped them all into folders. So you've got dramatic skies, you've got sunset, sunrises, and some of the best ones I've found is Sergio Romanelli site. On his website, he has some really good skies, and you can go through here and just pick one. So I'm going to go to icon at the top, and then I'm going to go into that one, so we can at least see roughly what they look like, and then we can pick one. So let's have a look. Maybe this one. Double click, and it will add it into the list here. So there it is, and it will automatically change it over. So I'm going to go with that one. So what's important is you don't click OK now, because this little module screen stays open inside the sky replacement module. What I generally do is click on this grey space away from there, and it just removes that picture and leaves you with the one that we've got, the one that we selected. Now, interestingly, when you look at this, you have a halo. You can see a halo around the buildings, and certainly where the trees are, to show that it hasn't really brought things together. So there's a number of ways you can deal with that. Firstly, you can use the shift edge and phase edge, and you can also use the edge lighting and foreground lighting. But we'll start at the top, and if we move the shift edge to the left, you'll see that it softens the edge, so we get a bigger halo. So that's not the way we want to go. And if you move it to the right, you'll get less of a halo, a much tighter sort of bite in around there. So I can just come over and just try to move that over a little bit more. And the fade edge below allows you to fade more or less depending on the building. So you can, if I go completely to the left, you'll see that it fades into the buildings. Now that can work sometimes quite well if you have windows that are reflecting the sky, because it will pick those up. But we don't want to do that, because you can see down here it's not doing very well down there. So we're just going to try to bring that fade edge and shift that edge back just a little bit so it looks better down here. So that's not too bad. The foreground lighting, you can adjust this moving left or right, and you see it has quite an impact on the sky again. So if I go from the left to the right, you can see that it does light the buildings up, but it tries to decrease this halo. And then the edge lighting, similar thing, you get this edge glow. So again, I'm going to bring that over to the right just to try and minimize as far as possible. Now, one of the little things I do like is right in the center, you'll see this little tick box for flip. If you click that, it will change the sky from the left to the right. And that can be very useful, because if you look here, you see that the top of this clock tower actually has a break in the cloud, and it doesn't look natural. So you could flip it. So you flip the sky around, and that gets rid of that to some degree. Or you can adjust the scale. So you can make the sky slightly smaller Now, what that does do, unfortunately, is it does mean that you don't get the sky on the very edge, and you might need to crop. Or what you can do is make it slightly bigger. So then you do manage to keep everything around the edges. So I'm gonna go there. Let's have a look where that sits at the moment. I can just drop that into a little box for the moment, and we'll come back to that in a minute. So that's looking pretty good. Can make the sky a little bit darker. If you make it too dark, you emphasize this halo effect as well. So you have to be a little bit careful how you do that, trying to minimize that halo, because otherwise it doesn't look natural. Color adjustment also at the bottom here is quite useful, because you can actually put more color into the sky or less color into the sky, which is very useful. And you can of course affect the temperature here, so we can make the sky more orange or less orange. So now you might think, well, we're pretty well there now, we're pretty well close, but I can still see this halo effect here, and I'm still not particularly happy with it along the top of the buildings there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the second tool down. Is it's a type of refine brush that you can use to try to reduce these edges. So if I select it, I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger by using the square brackets next to the return key, and I can make it bigger or smaller. I'm going to make it a fair size, and then I'm just going to paint along the edge of those buildings there, just like that, one paint and let go. And what it will do, it will render that edge back in. So I'll make it a little bit smaller, just go along there. So as you paint round just along that edge, you'll see a noticeable decrease in the halo that you tend to get. And if I zoom in on this tree here, I'm going to hold down the Option key and wheel my mouse. You can see that the sky replacement is pretty good. It's allowed all of the branches to come through, and it's infilled all the way around. We haven't lost too much detail. If I hold down the space bar and left click my mouse and move, I can move. Now you can see there is a halo along the top of that building there. So slightly smaller brush, and I'm just going to, in the refine mode, just going to go back and forward there a little bit, just to try to remove that ever so gently. Just going to run down there as well. There we go. A little bit smaller. Just paint along the top of the building there. There we go. Holding down the space bar again, just moving over to the other side, make sure that we have got everything in there. Just make my brush a little bit bigger. There we go. And you can see I can just bring up a little bit of colour in there. Space bar again. I'm just going to take it off that building. So, sorry, what I needed to do there was press the Alt key, Alt or Option key, to have a minus effect, so I can effectively take the sky away from those areas. Same on this building here, just still got my finger on the Option key, so I can just take that sky away. You can see down here that there's a little bit just on that building there that's just coloured through. So and I want to run along that roof line of that building that I was correcting, because it's not particularly good. So I'm going to go for a small brush, hold down the Option key. I'm going to click it one end, hold down the Shift key while still holding down the Option key, the Option or Alt key, and then I can draw a straight line along and just tidy that roof up just a little bit more. There you go. So that doesn't look too bad at all. So I'm just going to have a look over this way, make sure that yeah, we're getting a little bit of bleed over there. So I'm going to hold down the Option key, and I'm just going to paint those tiers. So I'm holding down the Option Alt key and then clicking and then holding down the shift key as well so I can get a straight line, and I'm just taking the sky away from those tiers there. On the front of this building you can see the same thing, so I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger, hold down the Option key, and then I'm just going to paint that sky away. There you go. Same there. So yeah, you need a little bit of detail to just look through. Same along the edge there again. You've just got to pay attention to holding down the Option key to give you a minus, and then the Shift key and Option key at the same time to draw a straight line. A little bit smaller brush. Oh, zoomed in there too much. Just going to there we go. So I'm going to zoom out again, so holding down the Option or Alt key and wheeling the mouse. Just going to check along the rest of the building tops there. That all looks fine. Got no bleed through on the buildings. A little bit there. So again, I'm still in that tool. I'm still in the refine tool. So make my brush a little bit bigger. Hold down the Option or Alt key, and just a couple of passes just to remove that from there. Just going to zoom in on the top of that. Make my brush nice and small. Just going to pick up the detail, holding down the Option key, clicking, holding down the Shift and Option key, so I can just bring a little bit of detail back. So I'm clicking with the Shift key just to, as you can see, just building that back a little bit. Slightly bigger brush, holding down the Option key, freehand drawing this time, just around the top of that dome. There we go. So Option key, wheel on the mouse to zoom out. And I think we've got a reasonably good sky replacement. I think we're in a good position. I'm just going to take just a little bit more, slightly bigger Option key, still in the refine tool. Just going to dance that a little bit darker over there. And I'm going to call that. So I'm happy with the sky we've got. What we're going to need to do is now close this ship module down, and you can choose to either have new layers. If you select new layers, it will give you a layer for every element of the picture. You end up with 6 or 7 layers, and that way you can adjust things, micro adjust things if you want to. I'm not going to show you that now. What I tend to do is just select duplicate layer because I've done the work here, and I click OK. And what will happen is the layers, it will just give us a layer, a new layer with the image as is. So if I turn that off, the top layer, you can see no sky, top layer on with sky. So I'm going to click on the bottom layer. I don't need it anymore. I'm going to right click and I'm going to remove it, delete the layer. And the reason I do that is that when we save and go back into Lightroom, all of that data from the second layer is also saved. So you end up with quite a large file. So I only want to work with this image. So I've got a single layer there now. I'm going to now send it back to Lightroom. So I'm going to click File, and then I'm going to click Close, and then I'm going to click Save. Don't do File Save because you'll end up slightly out of sync and you'll have to resynchronize it back into Lightroom. That's saved there now, and it's closed it. So I go back into Lightroom, and there's the image. So now we've got the sky replacement in. What we want to do is actually process this image now into some sort of black and white drama. We don't have a lot of color because it was a grade A, but we are able to do a number of things to make this image shine a little bit. So now we're going to go back to our basic panel here, and we're going to just bring the highlights down just a little bit. We're going to bring up the shadows now a little bit as well. We're going to do our whites by holding down the Option or Alt key and then sliding until we see the white appear. We don't want any white, so as you can see in the histogram top right, we're just clipping red. If we go completely white in that triangle, then we've exceeded the limits of our data. You can do the same with the blacks. Hold down the Option or Alt key and move the blacks, so you can start to see some black to appear. So the bottom right corner where the boat is, we want a little bit of black there, not too much. And again, in this case, it's not clipping at all, but if it was, that would lighten up as well. So I can show you that. If I just move that down a bit further, you'll see it'll go there yellow and red, and then no clipping at all will be right over here. In fact, we can't get away, so we've got red, we go to yellow, and then just go into white there, which is where we were. So happy with that. So now you might think, well, now should I just click black and white and go to a black and white image? I don't do it at this stage because I like to use the contrast of the color to try to boost the sort of dramatic side of the black and white. So I'm going to go back to color where we were, and we're going to exaggerate the color, we're going to exaggerate the contrast, and we're going to exaggerate the lighting, and then we'll move over to a black and white and probably exaggerate it even more to give you a very dramatic looking black and white image. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull in some masks. So I'll click on masks. I'm going to select the sky. So I select the sky, and then next to mask 1 with the sky selected, there's 3 dots. If you click on that, left click on that, you can intersect that mask, the sky, and you can intersect it with a linear gradient. So I'm going to pull in a gradient from the top right. So it's going to be darker up there, just like that. And then I'm going to, once that's in place, I'm going to darken that image a little bit more. So I'm going to bring up a bit more of the orange, not too much. There we go, and a little bit, just a little bit of contrast and clarity, just to boost that sky a little bit. Okay, now that's done, I'm going to take a new mask, go to a radial gradient, and then I'm going to brighten the right hand side of the screen up. Quite a large radial gradient coming across this way. I'm going to just brighten that up a little bit, as though the light's coming in across the top. I'm going to add some color to it, just a little bit with some magenta, not too much. That's good. And just going to reduce the highlight slightly and boost the shadows in that radial gradient over here. So that's fine. Now I'm going to take another mask, again a radial gradient, and I'm going to place it where the water is. Now if you go just outside the dots, you'll get a little up and down arrow, which means you can rotate the radial gradient. So I'm just going to rotate it so it follows this same sort of line here, like that. And then I'm going to brighten the water, just coming down that way, just a little bit more in the water there, a little bit of contrast and a little bit less clarity on that water. I don't want that to shine. However, these buildings have also been illuminated now. So whilst I'm in this radial gradient, mask 3, I'm going to go to subtract, and I'm going to take a brush, and I'm going to have a little bit of feather, about 15%, and I'm going to have 100% flow. And what I want to do is subtract this mask. So whatever I draw on here now, so if I draw a line, it will remove the radial gradient. Okay, so I can Command or Control Z to undo that. But so I want to subtract a brush, but I don't want these buildings to be affected by this, or the sky. So I'm going to click over here, and then I'm going to hold down the Shift key to do a straight click across, just like that. And then I'm just going to paint the rest of that out of the sky. I do not want that illuminated. Make the brush a bit bigger just to be sure. Now to see where the mask is, you can hover over the mask 3 there, as you can see, and that will show you where the actual mask is. Okay, so we've now got a bright piece of water here. I might want to actually light this area as well a bit more. So whilst we're on that mask, we can also add a brush. I'm going to go feather to 100% and flow at 50 because I want to be careful how I brush this in, and I just want to brush over this way. One brush, two brush, three brushes, just to bring that up a little bit lighter, make my brush a bit smaller, and just make that area a bit brighter as well. There we go. So we can blend that brightness into this over on the left hand side. That looks pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to darken the whole, going to come out of the masks, click done, and I'm just going to darken the whole scene slightly, like this, down to about -1.5 stops. I'm going to go back into masks. I'm going to grab a new radial gradient, and I'm going to light the sky from over this side. Okay, so in fact, before I do that, I'm going to select sky, there we go, intersect it with a radial gradient, and then draw the radial gradient out. That works very well. Then it saves me having to go too much around the buildings to light all back up. So now with that radial gradient, I'm going to just bring the brightness back up over there, a little bit more temperature, just bring that up, a little bit of contrast. Just keep the sky looking good there, maybe a little bit of clarity, yeah, not too much. And I'm just going to bring the highlights down a little bit for that sky. It's looking pretty good. And I'm going to take the previous radial filter down there and just boost that as well, just to bring that up, and add a little bit of temp to that as well. There we go, a little bit magenta as well. I'm going to grab a new mask, new radial gradient, and I'm going to light these buildings up. Okay, so I'm just going to move it over here. I'm going to pull this out a little bit further, shape it as though the light's coming from over there, just like that. Nice, quite a big one. Brighten the buildings up, add that temp again. Remember, we're going black and white, so you can be quite colourful. And I'm going to subtract from this mask, subtract the sky, just to get rid of that edge that you saw starting to show itself. I'm going to move that down a little bit more, just to brighten up those buildings there. That looks better, and a little bit of clarity and some contrast. It's looking pretty good. So you can see that the light's coming from the right and it's lighting up over here. So I'm going to add another one, radial gradient. Just going to pop one in on these buildings over this side. There we go. Just to boost those as well. Maybe pick up the boats a little. Subtract the sky again. Don't want this edge to be too bright. That looks good. I'm going to create another radial gradient, and I'm going to light these up this time. Coming through here, just change that angle slightly, and just brighten those up as well. A little bit of contrast, a little bit of clarity, and subtract the sky. Do not want the sky in that shot there. So that's looking pretty good. I think the sky needs more attention. So I'm going to create a new linear gradient coming right down in there, and I'm going to darken that up a bit more and add a bit of blue into that sky. Now, quite a good trick you can do is, rather than selecting the skies and then intersecting it with a gradient, which I've shown you, you can do the opposite. You can put the gradient on, and then you can remove the sky. That's the areas that are not the sky, sorry. So to do that, what you do is you subtract the sky, but that gets rid of the sky at the top. But once you've got that sky selected, what you can do is you can go to the select sky box below here and click invert, and then it will only remove the buildings, not the sky. We'll do the opposite. That's always quite a good tip as well. So that's fine. So let's take a second one of these. So I'm going to right click on the linear gradient. I'm going to duplicate the mask, and this one I'm going to pull it back so it's not quite so much over the buildings. There we go. So that's looking pretty good as well. So we're starting to create contrast. Got the buildings on the left, buildings on the right, the boats here. So I want to try to pick up a few more of these areas. So I'm going to go to mask again, select a new mask, select a brush. I'm going to have the flow at 50, feather it at 100, so we get quite a good effect. And I'm going to increase the exposure in this brush, a little bit of contrast and some clarity. And I'm just going to brush over some of the areas that I just want to pick up a little bit more. So these boats, this wall area a little bit. It's making my brush bigger and smaller all the time by rolling the mouse. So I'm just going to bring that in there, just lighten that up. Maybe these little deck areas here as well. That's fine, and maybe just the top of those buildings a little bit more. So effectively, you're just adding more light, more contrast in the areas. And as I say, you can exaggerate because it's going to be a black and white. So you can mess around with that. I can even put a small brush here and just pick up over these clouds here as well. That didn't work, so I'm going to Control or Command Z to remove those strokes. Select a new brush, same feather at 100% flow at 0, and I'm going to a little bit brighter, but I'm going to pick up the highlights and I'm going to add some clarity, and I'm just going to paint those clouds up nice and bright like that. So that's good. There's a little bit of a halo appeared again above the buildings, so I can go to create mask again, select a brush, and I can have, not going to change the feather, 100% flow, but this time what I can do is you can reduce contrast and you can reduce clarity, and then you can run along these edges with reduced contrast and clarity, and effectively it just removes a little bit of the halo effect. There we go. That's good. Okay, so I'm going to change to black and white, and then we'll do the final bit of processing to finish off the drama. So so accept all the masks, click black and white. So we've gone over to black and white. I like to add just a little bit of warmth to my black and whites, not too much, just a little bit, make them pop a little bit. And I'm going to go straight down the bottom to post-crop vignette, and I'm going to throw in quite a big vignette, about -30, but I'm going to feather it out. Okay, so we're just going to feather it right out 100%. So we've got this sort of darkness. I'm going to bring that down to 25. There we go. It's looking pretty good. I'm going to go back into masks. I'm going to create a new mask, a linear gradient, and I'm going to darken that sky down big time up the top. So we're going to come in about there, maybe rotate that down a bit further, like that. Pull it down, that's it. I'm going to right click on that, duplicate that mask, then make a smaller one up here. So we've got that darkness coming in from the top corner. I'm going to do the same, right click, duplicate, and I'm going to bring it down the bottom, spin it round so the dark is at the bottom, the light is at the top, and I'm just going to move it down into this position here, rotating it using the center line. Add some darkness in there as well, just not too much, bit of contrast. That's looking pretty good. And I think I'm probably going to need one in the top right corner. This time I'm going to create a new mask, linear gradient, and I'm just going to bring one in the top there, just to darken that down. So the whole image needs to be boosted. So we're going to select the masks, so they're all effectively as far as we want to go with those. We're going to boost the highlights a little bit, boost the shadows a little bit more white, a little bit more black. Going to give a pop of clarity, not too much. There we go. And some contrast. Again, not too much. And I'm just going to brighten the whole image just slightly, not too much. There we go. So there you go. We've gone from a grey day with difficult colours, and we've turned it into a black and white, given it some contrast, given it a bit of an old world look, and yeah, it's come out pretty good actually. I'm quite happy with that. So I hope you enjoyed that one, and if you like what I do, please subscribe, and a like would be really welcomed, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for that. Bye bye.